Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to MusicWise. I'm Donato Cabrera, music director of the Las Vegas Philharmonic and California Symphony. And with me this week, we were just reminiscing, actually, that we met 20 years ago now at the Aspen Music Festival. And our guest for this MusicWise has gone on to such an extraordinary career. And let's just dive into our conversation with Camille Zamora.
Hello.
Hi, Camille. Welcome to MusicWise. You know, the last MusicWise I had a couple of weeks ago, I had another a friend of mine, the wonderful soprano Elise Caliwertz, and I saw that you were tuning in, and it came to me. I said, "Oh my gosh, it would be so wonderful if Camille and I." It would just give us an opportunity to catch up with one another more than anything.
I love it. You have good publicists because all these people have been getting these great sort of little blasts about all the amazing things you're doing. And I always think, Donato and I need to sit down and have coffee. So here we are with our coffee.
Oh, good. We have similar ceramic coffee cups this morning.
Actually, this is a gift from Adriana Zavala, my dear sister and friend. And according to your mood, you can have this side or this side.
Absolutely. We'll see how the conversation goes, and I'll get a sense of where your mood is as we're talking. So, Camille, you know, we did meet at the Aspen Music Festival now a while back, and you know, since then, you were tell us a little bit about what, in a nutshell, what you did after, as you were going into school at Juilliard, and what your goals were at the time, what you were thinking of then as opposed to now.
You know, it's such a interesting thing. I think probably like so many of us, you know, I always feel like I'm figuring it out as I go, and certainly the ongoing life goal of trying to figure out how to sing and express myself in this way that I think, you know, since I was little, always called to me. Mm-hmm. I was lucky enough to go to Juilliard for a couple of degrees, starting around that summer that I met you. I began in 2000 through 2004, and fantastic teachers and coaches, and yeah, just sort of made my way in New York. I actually grew up in Texas, and great public school music education, but I always sort of dreamt of coming to Juilliard, and was lucky enough to have really good opportunities there, and then to come out and do some opera. And over the years, that kind of transformed into what is now kind of more of a concert career. When I'm lucky, I get to sing with wonderful symphony orchestras. Of course, that world is on hold right now, and I know we'll talk about that. But another kind of part of my path all along has been with my best friend at Juilliard. I started an organization called Sing for Hope, which has also been a big part of my journey. And it's sort of
at the time, I want to talk about Sing for Hope because it's such an extraordinary organization. What were you and Monica thinking when you were going to? So what was the inspiration for starting it?
You know, I think all of us who are interested in creativity, which I guess I would say is all of us, there's a sense that you're kind of impelled by a certain way of looking at things. And I think, I don't know, I think there's an impulse towards the light, for whatever that means. You know, I think we're drawn to music because we're drawn to those expressions that make us feel uplifted and sort of greater than ourselves. And I guess sort of that transcendent aspect that is in all great music. And I think, you know, fundamentally, Sing for Hope is about trying to find that direct channel to the heart and bringing it to places where there is sometimes an absence of hope. In particular, you know, hard-hit hospital settings where folks are dealing with really fundamental issues of life and death, and can just benefit from a shot of hope. And I think, you know, bringing the arts into that context, you know, increasingly now the science is catching up with that to show that it fast tracks goals of healing and rehabilitation. But I think also just having art in our daily lives is something that is always really fascinated me. And Sing for Hope is kind of about that. It's about bringing the arts to bear as a driver of healing and education and social cohesion.
And when did you and Monica begin the organization?
So we were actually at Juilliard at a really hard time. We were there on the morning of September 11th. And I think, like so many people, that was a day that just stopped us in our tracks. And I know for me, really left me with this sense of, why on earth am I a musician? You know,
Mhm.
what can music do at a moment like this when the world is falling down around us? And Juilliard actually shares a city block with a firehouse that was a first responder that day. That firehouse lost 13 guys. And so the next day, a group of us just came together and we made a little binder of songs, and we went and we shared performances with the people who are waiting for those fire guys to return. And they cried and we cried. And I think what we found was there actually was a place for the arts in this moment of crisis. And so in the weeks and months that followed, we started going to firehouses around the city. And then fast forward many years, we now are in schools and hospitals. We're actually beyond New York City. We're in refugee camps. We're in transit hubs. Really any place that can benefit from that just shot of hope and transcendence and kind of human connection that the arts can bring.
It intrigues me when I speak to fellow artists who have started an organization of some sort. It's invariably the success of its founding, of why it began, was through the art first rather than through the mission. You know what I'm saying? You went out and did it, and then through doing it, you created the organization around the art form itself. Yeah.
Well, you know, it's so funny. I always say, I mean, really, we are building the bus as we are driving it, you know, in terms of how the mission works and the organization, the infrastructure. I mean, we now, you know, for the last decade, we've been a solid organization. We are sort of toggle between like the $2 and $3 million annual operating budget. We have a great board. You know, it's not a small organization. That said, we are constantly reevaluating, especially in this COVID moment. All of our programs are about that human connection. And so what we've really been trying to find now is, in this digital world, how do we continue to deliver value through this screen, which is at once, you know, wonderful. I'm thankful for it, but also can feel very alienating. And so, you know, we are forever iterating and reinventing. And I think we've also really benefited from great mentors and guides. Early on, Monica and I had something in common, which is that we weren't afraid to ask any question of anyone. And so great folks have advised us and kind of helped us along. And actually, I will quote one of my dear friends, who's been a great mentor, Luis Moreno, always says, listen, you know, the whole key is fail quickly. So don't not fail, because that actually won't happen. You will fail. But the key is quickly pick yourself up, try a different direction, and keep going. And I think that lesson has served us well. We've made amazing, triumphant mistakes, but we have continued to iterate and build new programs. And you know, I think we're really doing something important.
You absolutely are, and it's, for me, since I've been sort of watching from afar since its inception, it's been so wonderful to see the growth of Sing for Hope and the amount of projects and that you've done over the years. Just again, this idea of doing something and being engaged. For so long, symphony orchestras and as you know, classical music in general sort of has had a tendency to be rather sheltered or risk averse, shall I say. Yet now here we are in a time where we must reach out in all ways except the way that we knew how to do, which was to produce live concerts in a concert hall. And so I am looking to tried and true organizations like Sing for Hope that has reached out, will continue to reach out. Tell me some of the projects that you have, that Sing for Hope, that you're doing now, sort of online, that you may not have been doing in the past.
Absolutely. You know, it's so funny, Donato. I mean, I'm sure, you know, even this wonderful conversation we're having, I mean, you know, we probably wouldn't have taken time out of our busy racing around lives necessarily to create this hour together. So, you know, there are beautiful beautiful side effects of this funny moment. And I hope those are the things that will stick when, not if, but when we come out the other side of this. And I do have to admit, in terms of speaking of coming out the other side, even hearing you say, concerts in concert halls, I mean, I miss that with a physical angst. I so miss being surrounded by that cushion of orchestral sound. And one of the things I've come to realize, I'm sure you're dealing with this too, is that making music in a concert hall is so much a part of my kind of emotional coping strategy, for lack of a better word. I mean, it's my therapy in so many ways. I sort of sing my heart. And so finding a way to do that, I'll admit, for the first couple months of this shelter at home, I haven't really wanted to sing. And only now, personally, am I starting to sing again. So, sorry, bit of a tangent, but to answer your question about Sing for Hope, it's precisely that kind of static feeling and that sense of incredible isolation and loneliness that COVID has really, turned the volume up on. Clearly, there's unimaginable trauma going on in our world right now. And I think there's sort of this low-grade depression that this planet that we are on is feeling. And just, it's a sense of kind of collective heartbreak. And trying to find a way to break through that using live art in particular is, I think, really, really powerful. One of the programs we've been doing is called Sing for Hope Grams, like old school singing telegrams. And, sounds a little kind of like, oh God, really? But, it's funny, just the act of kind of surprise and delight that you have when you pick up the phone and, Donato has sent you a singing telegram, a Sing for Hope gram from a Broadway artist, Broadway being dark right now, and all of these amazing artists being, available for this kind of work. Pick up the phone, they sing you your favorite love song, you feel a sense of just elevation. And it really is something, even through the phone, there is that sense of lifting your vibrational kind of energy. And I'm actually quoting from a sweet woman the other day who said that, she just said, just generally her sort of there's this sense of kind of low vibration right now, and energetically using the art to lift your vibrational sense during this shelter at home period, I think is really a profound thing. And the nuts and bolts of it are that we have, of course, this incredible roster at Sing for Hope. There are thousands of artists who have volunteered with us over the years. One of the things that became really quickly clear to us was that, the world stages are dark. We, as artists, are freelancers, the majority of us, and we are without work for the foreseeable future. And it felt like it would be very tone deaf to be asking these great artists who have volunteered tons of time with us over the years, but this is not the moment to ask for arts volunteerism. So we pivoted to a fee-paying model where we have artists who basically make a little fee for providing these Sing for Hope grams. And these are, incredible folks. Alison Cambridge, who, is calling to do your Sing for Hope gram, and she would have actually been at the Kennedy Center singing the title role in Porgy and Bess, and instead she's singing Summertime for You on your phone. It's really this moment of surprise and delight. And beautiful artists from Broadway, and we have instrumentalists, and it's just a way that artists can feel their art doing its work in the world. And you can give a message to your sweet mom who's far away in Texas and maybe is feeling lonely herself, and it's just a way to maintain that connection. So that's one of the programs we've been doing.
It's fabulous. That's such a wonderful idea to stay engaged on a really personal one-on-one level. And from my orchestra, both of the Las Vegas Philharmonic and the California Symphony, what we're finding is that not only are the musicians, of course, wanting to perform and wanting to do what they have trained for their whole lives, but our audience is so in need of this music that they're no longer experiencing in any way, shape, or form. And so anytime we've done something, and as all orchestras and opera companies and individual artists start to explore the online format, what we're experiencing is this sponge that's needed water. Our art form is just our wonderful audience, the lovers of what we do are just waiting. They're waiting with bated breath for what for when they can experience our art form again. So it's not just from our point of view, of course.
No, it's that energetic exchange. And I do think, there's that ongoing conversation, and certainly in our, nation's various budgets at the, local and federal level, there's that ongoing conversation. Are the arts a nice to have or a need to have? And I do think right now, as we deal with this, parallel epidemic of loneliness and isolation and trauma, the arts are a balm and they are a fuel for the road ahead. And I think people really are increasingly gravitating to a live arts experience, however they can find that. And I think it's going to be a really important part of the rebuild, the Renaissance, if you will. Dr. Paul Kwok, a wonderful laryngeal surgeon here in New York City, who happens to be a beautiful pianist. Actually, we went to school together. He said it so beautifully, which is that I'd sort of reached out, and some of our Sing for Hope friends had reached out to thank him during this time. He's been doing tracheostomies on people with COVID and working tirelessly. And we just said, thank you for what you're doing. And he said, listen, y'all, thank you, because the artists are the ones who will meet us on the other side and help us with our recovery. So I think it's really, I don't know, it's important for ourselves. I think self-care during this moment, trying to have the energy of the marathoner, because this is going to be a long process. I know innately I'm a sprinter, so marathon energy is sometimes hard to channel, but just the awareness that this is going to be a long process, but we will come out the other side, and finding a way to stay creatively engaged in the process, I think that's going to be the challenge.
Well, I have no doubt that you and Monica and Sing for Hope are going to be leaders in this and taking us to this other reality that we're now experiencing. You mentioned something that is always so intriguing to me, which is when we begin this journey, when we know and we don't always know when that's going to be. When we begin conservatory, let's say, we're like, okay, I think this is what I'm going to do. This is happening. And I was just recently so impressed, and I loved your latest recording. And you, like you said, you have explored recitals and different formats of concertizing, as well as opera, of course. And this new album was, to me, I know you have a Hispanic background, and these songs that you recorded were just in my opinion, such a great expression of your background. And tell us a little bit before I want to give everyone the chance to hear these wonderful videos. But tell us a little bit about this project, how this recording project came to be.
Oh, thank you. So my dad was Spanish, and I sort of grew up with that yummy music as part of my touchstone. It was always almost a guilty pleasure for me. If I'd be getting ready to go on stage to sing a Mozart role, I would always warm up and make sure things felt really right by singing these old Spanish songs. And I was in Madrid one summer and wandered into this old, wonderfully dusty music store and found these old folios of these songs. And they were old collected folk songs. And there was this one arranger's name that kept popping up, Graciano Tarragó. And I started researching about him, and he was this sort of unsung hero. He was a guitar professor in Barcelona, and he had actually been the professor of Victoria de Los Angeles, who is my idol. Somewhere in this interwebs, there is a recording or two of her playing guitar, accompanying herself on the guitar. And
I've never heard.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Talk about the most organic musician. And I think for me, my favorite artists are the ones who manage to sort of inhabit kind of the grand space of a concert hall, but keep that organic simplicity. And to me, she is just the queen of that just direct expression. And she became very good friends with his daughter, Renata Tarragó, and the two of them concertized and recorded together, and they recorded these beautiful old arrangements. And, you know, he was one of those composers and arrangers kind of in the first half of the 20th century, along with Britten and Bartók, who collected these old songs that would have been lost otherwise, these oral tradition, campfire, cradle, folk songs. And, you know, basically, what quarantine would have looked like without Netflix. You know, it was these wonderful stories in song. I sort of always say these treasures, they feel like these little, you know, operas in miniature, each one of these songs. And of course, it's also beautiful as it's such a survey of the Spanish countryside. My dad's family is actually from the Basque country. Actually, funny enough, but there's one song in Basque, but they basically have almost all of the various sort of Spanish regions represented. And I was lucky enough to record it. The wonderful genius producer, Marlon Berry, recorded it in the Academy of Arts and Letters here in New York City. Beautiful, just a yummy acoustic space. And my friend...
Well, I was just going to interject, just for those that aren't aware of this, the Academy, you know, it's still not open to the public, correct? After all these years. Okay. And yet, if you look at so many recordings over the entire 20th century, you see this you know, this name of this space. And of course, it used to be a wonderful place to go to see concerts in Upper Manhattan. Exactly. But now, you know, it's still one of the most acoustically perfect spaces in the country, and yet it's not open anymore. And you walk in to make as I have done as well, and you see this space and you just think, gosh, I wish I was a multi-billionaire to somehow make this space open again.
It's so fascinating. Yeah, it's a puzzlement, because I don't know if it's for lack of funds, I'm not sure, or if it's just part of the mystique is to keep it as this little secret treasure. But it's up there in Harlem, and you walk in and your jaw drops, and the sound, there's a magic in that sound. And Marlon, just shout out to Marlon Berry if y'all are looking for a brilliant producer, audio engineer, therapist, all of the above. He just really do what to do in a recording session, bring all of the I think various kind of colors to life. And my amazing friend, Cem Duruoz, who I went to Juilliard with, beautiful, beautiful Turkish guitarist, obviously brings the guitar part to life. Louis Levitt of Bright Shiny Things, the great double bassist and producer, engineer, record label owner, was part of our team. And of course, Kabir Sagal, my dear friend, who is just a genius at bringing things together. We sort of conspired. And, you know, it's funny, this also, full disclosure, I think this may have sat on the back burner a little longer had it not been for this shelter at home moment. But suddenly I found myself with the time to do the final little hurdle of, you know, getting the program notes together and getting it off. And we just released it. Honored to have it debut in the top 10 on the Billboard classical charts. And, you know, I think for me, it's a very personal album. The title, If the Night Goes Dark, Si la noche se hace oscura, is from a beautiful 16th century song that Tarragó wrote. And it's kind of, it's a very mystical song, but to me, it's about a lot of things, but it's about how if there is someone dear to you, and even if you're not with them, there is that sense that you can reach out to them however you want. And certainly through your voice and through your energy, prayer, however you want to define it, but there is that sense that love can span distance. And it felt somehow very meaningful to share that message with this world that is in this middle of this shelter at home moment, to share this idea that we can reach across huge boundaries and be together through music.
I think that, and again, kudos to your recording engineer, because he does, well, first of all, he creates that atmosphere on the recording that is just perfect in terms of creating that space where your voice and Jem's guitar playing, which is extraordinary, is just so welcoming. And of course, the way you sing these songs and the way he plays and the way you work together is really. Have you done a live recital with him of these songs?
Do those, and in fact, in Turkey as well as in the States. So
Mhm.
we had an amazing tour. We were in Izmir, and my one and only time that I've been in Turkey was a joy. And we performed them in Arizona, here in New York, at the United Nations, actually. Yeah, so they're really very special. Yeah, there's something. I also think there's something about that palette of soprano sound and guitar sound.
Yes.
It's just somehow a happy mixture, I think.
So we have two tracks that were two songs that you wanted to share with us. Tell us about the first one, Jaineras.
Absolutely. Jaeneras. Jaén is the Andalusian region that is sort of famous for that gypsy expression. And you'll very much hear that sort of gypsy flamenco scale, the bent second scale degree, that wonderful, those florid passages. You hear that in this song. I love it. There's even a moment where the accent from Jaén, the traditional accent, is sort of poked fun at. It talks about the ronquillo, which literally kind of means like, it's from the word to snore, but it refers to the fact that in Jaén, there's this sort of guttural sound that you hear in the accent, which is really cool. And it's a song about loving the earth and the place that you're from.
Well, let's take a listen. And I love how you incorporate that dialect, that the way it's very wonderful. That's a wonderful. It's so evocative, of course, of Spain, and I love there are very few musical styles that are so identifiable with the region and with the language and with the culture, and this song certainly captures that, doesn't it?
It really does. It's that whole amazing journey you hear in particular the music of Andalusia, because it's all about that journey from Northern Africa, up through the Iberian Peninsula, the evolution of flamenco, which of course, you know, the ululations of the mosques, you hear that. It's the Moorish influence that you hear in those scales, and that is so quintessentially Spanish.
You said you found this. You said you found this music in Madrid. Did you spend time growing up? You said your father's from Spain. Did you have time every year to experience that culture?
So I do have. I have family there. I haven't been back enough, but I have spent time there, and that was on one of the sort of great family visits. I actually grew up, funny enough, off and on in Mexico City because my dad had worked there, and I was lucky enough to go to school there, and yeah, you know, I just think on some cellular level, I always say that is the part of me that sings, is sort of Spanish cells.
Tell us about the next one, the Tengo que Subir.
Oh yes, Tengo que Subir. This I love this piece. It's very simple. It is you hear in a way the mountain air, I feel, in this piece. I have to go up. I have to climb the mountain to my love. What if I can't reach her? I will go. So it's a you know, one more just wonderful song of yearning, and I think of sort of the life journey.
Wonderful. Of course, you grew up bilingual, I would assume, and but for most opera singers, especially American opera singers, learning to sing, learning other languages, singing in other languages is really the whole. It's a lifetime of what it means to be an opera singer, especially, but. Tell me what it's like for you to sing these songs in terms of their emotional content, what they mean to you when you sing them.
What a beautiful question. Thank you. You know, I think that's probably why, without having verbalized it so eloquently, I mean, I think that's why I always used it as my touchstone warming up backstage, to sort of check that things felt right, is, you know, before plunging in with the Countess, which hopefully feels organic by the time you're bringing it onto a stage and in front of an audience. But, you know, at the end of the day, has certain figures and you know, tricks of the trade that are not innately what I grew up with. You know, all of those categories are erased when I sing these songs, because it's just fundamental. So I think there is something about that kind of home body of repertoire that yeah, you know, an artistic touchstone. And it you know, it doesn't always have to be something that you necessarily grew up with linguistically, but that there's something, again, it's sort of what's so beautiful about that zone that you can find yourself in as an artist is that it is pre-verbal. It's that universal kind of subconscious state. It's very hard to put into words, but there's something just almost like the animal part of ourselves that brings that message out. And I think that's what's so cleansing about it, is that sense of just pure spirit and pure emotion.
No,
so, yeah, it's good therapy.
I'm sure it is. You wanted to share, and the reason I ask is because I do believe, though, that if you have more than one language when you're growing up,
yeah,
putting yourself into learning another role, say in French or in German or whatever language or Italian, Russian, the idea of having another tongue, another voice inside of you isn't completely foreign. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great way to say it.
And what I love so much is that one of my favorite pieces, I'm so glad you shared it with all, and we're about to watch it, is Poulenc's La Voix humaine, and this production that we're going to watch. It's such a wonderful production. Tell about the piece, how you came to it, and the production we're about to watch.
You know, again, it is funny. And yes, I mean, this is a piece that is in French. And I was lucky I had a little bit of early experience in French, because I was a nanny as a teenager to a French family. My folks thought that would be a good idea to ship me off one summer. And so I have a little bit of kind of understanding, I think, from early on about the French language, and probably also because of the similarity with Spanish. But all of that said, yeah, I think those sort of characters and pieces that resonate with you, for better for worse, La Voix humaine is something that I always just sort of understood, I think, on a core level. And I've been lucky enough to perform it several times with amazing Jerry Steichen and Stephen White, the wonderful Maestro White, and a gorgeous production done by Crystal Manich. So that was a highlight. This particular production was in New Zealand, Auckland Opera, and the amazing Frances Wilson Fitzgerald, who founded the company down there and gave me the first opportunity to coach it with her and perform it. And you know, she's just someone who absolutely demands vocal and emotional authenticity. And to work this piece with her was an incredible exercise. For those who don't know, the piece itself is kind of a marathon. It is basically a 50-minute sort of tour de force monodrama, one-woman opera, soprano, and a telephone. And basically, it is my conversation with my great love the night before he marries someone else. And so sort of takes off from there.
Great, let's watch. We're going to see part of the final scene, yes?
Exactly, the final scene. And, you know, again, for folks who know Poulenc, he was a fascinating guy, really a profound spiritual composer. He was a very brave person living as a gay man in Paris in the 1950s, and he wrote this for his best friend, Denise Duval. Interestingly enough, Paris Opera had suggested it as a vehicle for Maria Callas. And he was like, yeah, Callas, amazing, but Denise has that particular flavor that I want. And apparently they'd both been going through a tough breakup, Poulenc and Denise, as they were crafting it. And he said they would get together in the afternoons and cry and write and cry and write. All of that said, though, I know this sounds crazy because, of course, it's kind of tragic material, but I think there's also something very cathartic about the piece and kind of uplifting. And part of that is because of the wit of this character. The libretto, of course, is Cocteau, Jean Cocteau. He originally premiered it as just a monologue play in 1928. And the character is, in fact, I think the key to an effective performance of this is that she has a lot of light and humor. And so, of course, it's this very tragic setup, but throughout the course of this conversation and the many kind of broken lines and, early versions of bad Wi-Fi, she basically goes through the whole gamut of emotions as she talks with her love. And I think you could say that, oh, this is a story of a woman being victimized and she's lost love and she's falling apart. And I mean, maybe there's some of that, but I think there's also something really, really strong about her. And part of that is because I see her as someone who gives over to loving completely without protection, without protecting herself. It's like she knows that he is gone, that he is leaving. There can be all sorts of backstory about why that is, but there is sort of a sense that she does know that, and she chooses to still just give him all of her love and to wish him well. And I think there's something really joyful, and there's a lot of humor in the piece as well. And yeah, it's definitely a favorite opera.
Well, let's watch this part of the final scene from Poulenc's Tour de Force, La Voix humaine. Okay, well, that wasn't. It was part of what we were talking. But nevertheless, there are few composers who have such an individual stamp. You can hear just 2 bars of Poulenc's music. He has this lovely gesture. I mean, it's throughout his oeuvre. I mean, it's in almost everything, this descending sighing motif that he uses.
There is a doctorate waiting to be written about that, because I do think there were moments, and I'm not musicologically sound enough to analyze it, but there are moments in Voix humaine that absolutely track with the dialogues. Dialogues of the Carmelites. And there's that same sense of whether it's, Blanche in Dialogues of the Carmelites, her religious surrender, or Elle in La Voix humaine, her sort of sensual surrender to her love. There's that same wonderful, strange, open forth figure that kind of recurs. So I think that's a book that we're waiting for you to write.
I'm academia, and I'll be happy to write it on not for a thesis.
I have a recurring dream that they come and take my degrees from me because they know I never understood theory. They're like, you didn't understand that.
Speaking, that brought back such amazing memories of when we first met to that summer at the Aspen Music Festival, where we, with Ed Berkeley, of course, was the director, where we maybe you had performed Dialogue of the Carmelites in some way or capacity before, but I had never worked on that opera. And learning that and being the assistant conductor for that production with the amazing James Conlon was really life-changing for me.
It's interesting. The few times that I've seen or been involved in productions of that show, I think the show is life-changing. And of course, everything in Aspen always feels kind of euphoric because of the teams that Ed has brought together over the years, and because of that crazy mountain air. I just, that's God's country. But yeah, no, there was something really magical about that summer. And I don't know if you remember beautiful Makiko, the beautiful mezzo who had passed. She passed after that summer from cancer, and she had, of course, sung that role that is about transcendence. And so there were a lot of levels of emotion that summer. And again,
I don't know what was maybe 5 or so years later, maybe less, when Maestro Conlon came to the Met to remount one of the greatest productions the Met has ever produced in their many years, and I hope they never take this out of the repertory, which is John Dixon's famous Dialogue of the Carmelites from, I believe, maybe 1972. That's one of the older productions still in the repertory. It's
the original Met production. I don't know if the Met did another production.
I think you might be. That's absolutely right. And who needs to change something so perfect? Did you see it when it was there?
No, I didn't. But now I have to give a shout out for folks who are watching the Met broadcast these days. Isabel Leonard and Aaron Morley and David Portillo and all sorts of gorgeous folks in the current production. I think the video from last season, unbelievable.
That's right.
And I'm sure I'm forgetting other great people in the cast, but it's just, it's funny. That is one of those operas that it feels like you sit down and it goes by so fast, and it's just the trajectory, the musical tension, and the dramatic build of that show to that final scene. It's really one of the most astonishing works of art.
It is, and I think that the idea that one has to be immersed in the French language is important, certainly with this opera, because it's really parlando, and it's really conversations throughout the entire opera, until, of course, the incredible dramatic scenes that happen in specific moments where it's just grand. You don't really need to have any language at all to understand what's about to happen or what is happening. But regardless, if you're an audience member, seeing that opera unfold is really one of the great 20th century examples of the art form.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think in my better moments, I do think a good life operating principle is that sense that you just give yourself over to experience it, because I think, certainly the current moment, as we try to figure out next steps in music and life and economy and every possible sector of the world, increasingly you realize that you can plan and you can be risk averse, but it doesn't matter, because there is something else that will happen, and really all we can do is this moment, this present moment. And I think one of the reasons why I love Carmelite so much is that in the final moment, Blanche, through faith, does just give herself to experience. That's her big central battle, I think, is that she's in the first act, she's so frightened to live. and she's constantly trying to sort of control life, and against the backdrop of the French Revolution, she's trying to make things work out. And it's like in the final moment she becomes her best self and just says, I will live for love, I will live for my sisters, and I will give myself over. And I just think it's it's just deeply powerful.
It is indeed. Tell us about this collaboration, the video that you made with Yo-Yo Ma of At Last. This is such a wonderful video.
So we had the joy at Sing for Hope of celebrating the 20th anniversary of the AIDS Quilt Songbook. And this was something really spearheaded by the amazing musician Thomas Bagwell, if you've ever worked with him, a great pianist and just a dear person. And he came to us and said, listen, the classical music world is about to celebrate the 20th anniversary of its first organized response to the AIDS crisis. And basically said, listen, let's bring together some of the folks who have been involved in this first AIDS Quilt Songbook. And sure enough, kind of looking around the New York City musical landscape, Steve Blyer and John Musto, and so many of these wonderful interpreters and composers were surrounding us. And so we said, listen, let's make some new commissions. Let's maybe bring to life again some of the beautiful pieces from the original AIDS Quilt Songbook. Let's make a recording. Let's do a concert. And this piece, At Last, was written by the wonderful composer Scott Gendel, and he and Yo-Yo and I recorded it. And again, speaking of transcendence, the poem is so much about just sort of moving beyond. It's actually Wendell Berry, the wonderful farmer and poet and philosopher, who just gave us this gift of a poem. So yeah, it was very special to sing that. And of course, doing anything with Yo-Yo is always kind of a miracle. So
isn't he, what I love about his music making is it's his generosity. He's always, regardless of the situation, he's just there for others. It's selfless music making.
Donato, it's so funny because people have asked me about him before and said, what is it like to work with him? And I am so lucky. I've worked with such beautiful musicians so many times, really, and worked with beautiful cellists. And Yo-Yo is undeniably a beautiful cellist. But I think the thing about him is that, as you say, he's so generous and he's so present. I remember being in the studio with him that day, and just the way that he engages with every person. It's like the person whose responsibility is to turn on the light switch in the recording studio, he engages with them. So they turn on the light switch better than they ever have. And it's, there's that, I don't know, there's just that sense of full engagement in the human experience, for lack of a better phrase, that he inspires in people. And so as a result, not only is he this fierce soloist, of course, but he brings out the most incredible collaborations because he's just so truly present with everyone he engages with. So I don't know, it's quite something to see. And he's incredibly silly, and that also helps. Like, he's a total goofball. So
it's a complete goofball. Good. Wonderful. Let's listen to it. It's such a wonderful song. Had you known Scott before singing this song?
I was such a fan of his. I heard that song sung so beautifully by Emily
Hmm.
Almrich Katz, beautiful soprano. And I was just like, what is this piece? So I reached out to Scott and I said, listen, you need to be part of the Stage School Songbook. You need to write an obligato for a cellist called Yoyo Mom, and you have to do it. And so Scott was lovely enough to do it, and Yo-Yo was wonderful enough to come on board. And yeah, it's really Scott is a very special composer.
Very much so. I just shared his website with everyone so they can check his music out because it's very special. It reminded me in a wonderful way of Bernstein's song "To What You Said" with poetry by Walt Whitman from his Songfest. And for those of you who I don't know if you know that song cycle by Leonard Bernstein.
Love that. What a great association. You're inspiring me. I need to go back and revisit that.
It's a piece I am dying to do, and I'm going to look and see what Scott has available to maybe. Yes, absolutely.
He just knows how to write for the voice in such a comfortable and joyful way. He's truly great.
We should have played this last video that you shared with us when we were talking about Sing for Hope, but what's that?
You can have me back and we'll do it another time.
Yeah. Well, we can still share it, but what projects aside from, of course, Sing for Hope, what sort of projects are you dreaming about now? I wanted you to talk briefly about your wonderful orchestral show that I've been dying to do for so long, your tango show.
So I am so lucky. My unbelievable visionary manager, Jamie, if you're familiar with Jamie Greenberg Artists, is kind of the premier manager for orchestral pops and has all sorts of incredible shows, something crazy like 45 different shows, ranging from Women Rock, which is a survey of, like it sounds, women rockers arranged for orchestra. And that's actually a partnership with Schirmer because she has kind of pioneered with Schirmer Theatricals a lot of their catalog. So whether it's Pat Benatar or the Beatles, she does those orchestral arrangements together with her and the brilliant pops conductor and arranger and composer Jeff Tyzik. We've created a couple of shows, actually. Sueños de España is wonderful Spanish pops from all different regions. Tango Caliente is the most fun. It's glorious tango dancers, Patricio Eva from Argentina, and we do just the classic Gardel and Piazzolla, all those wonderful, wonderful classic tangos. And then actually just this last season, in fact, right before concerts stopped at the end of February in Orlando, with the fabulous Orlando Phil, we premiered a terrific show called Havana Nights, which is my collaboration with the Mambo Kings. And it's beyond fun. We do all sorts of just delicious Cuban stuff. We do some zarzuela. We, of course, do like the amazing sort of Afro-Cuban jazz that the Mambo Kings are famous for. And touch wood, we are hoping to bring that back. We have various dates on the calendar. And of course, it's always this whole big question mark about when are these theaters opening up again. You probably know better than I. Who knows? These questions of when do we get to come back together in person to make music, but it will happen. And lots of great symphonies upcoming: Austin Symphony, Santa Barbara Symphony, Virginia Symphony. Yeah, so we're bringing this wonderful music, which, to be honest, I do feel like the Spanish, I don't know, those sort of wonderful Spanish pop songs, the boleros and the zarzuela and all of this sort of Spanish inflected stuff, I feel like it really excites audiences and is such sort of a growth opportunity for orchestras in terms of development. So that's kind of a mission that Greenberg Artists has, is to continue to bring content that develops those audiences for orchestras.
I absolutely agree. In of course, all of the southwestern states and states like Florida, of course, there is a large portion of that culture and society of our community that we can celebrate with them. The incredible musical and cultural history that is it's there, just waiting. This low-hanging fruit, really.
Is. It's just, I mean, those rhythms are infectious. That music, I think no one is immune to it. But honestly, just looking at our country's demographics and growth opportunities, this is a deeply musical audience that we want to pull into the concert hall and say, this is your music, this is your hall, this is your experience, this is your symphony. And our experiences over the last couple of years with the orchestras around the country that we've been working with, it's been astonishing.
Well, Camille, it's so wonderful to finally catch up with you and see you, and to hear about all the incredible things you've done since we last worked together. and hopefully we can remedy that soon and work together again. And all the best to you. And thank you so much for being a guest on MusicWise this week.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you again, and see you next week.